Hello and welcome to this Veo Webinar, day 2 in the Webinar Week series. Today we'll dive a bit more into how you can get more value from using your video recording after you record your game, learn a bit about a few tips and tricks on how to get more value for your club. My name is Oliver, I'm part of Veo and I'll be your host of the webinar today. I'm accompanied by one of our trusted users and our guest speaker, Dennis. So let me hand it over to you, Dennis, with a bit of an intro about who you are.
Yes, my name is Dennis. I'm 47 years old and I'm the head coach of Espergærde, north of Copenhagen.
Thanks. We're thrilled to have you in and I'm super excited to get started. But before we dive into the topic of today, I just want to hear, Dennis, how long have you been using Veo at Espergærde and yourself?
We've been using Veo for, I think it's approximately 3 years now, 2.5, 3 years. And now we have 2 cameras and we started up with 1 camera and we quickly found out that we needed 1 more. So that's the story of that, yeah.
Thanks. Do you know how many teams you're using it for in the club?
I think it's about 10 teams or so. It goes all the way from adult and all the way through to 5 and 6 years old.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Sounds great. I think the next question for me would also be to understand a little bit about your coaching style. If you can put a few words to the way you coach.
My coaching style. I love football. I've been playing football for my whole life. And I think football should be entertainment and it should be a fun game to play as well. So that's also how I try to coach and how our playing style is. In short, it's linked up to the 3 P's: possession, positioning, and pressing. And there's so many angles to that, but to wrap it in, it's all about the 3 P's in the different stages of the game. As a person, I'm very passionate, and I just like people and different people and different personalities. And I think it's very important to make them shine in a football team as well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Super exciting. What level are you playing in the team that you coach? What level are you playing in Denmark?
So we are at the, how can I say this, the highest tier of amateur football in Denmark. Mid-tier.
Sort of the mid-tier.
Sort of mid-tier, yeah.
The last question in the intro, because it's super exciting to learn a bit more about Dennis and the club he's representing. Why did you start using Veo back then, if you remember? And has it changed since then? Now it's 2-3 years ago.
It has developed because there was so much more potential in it than we knew in the first place. But obviously we wanted to record our games and to see it afterwards, to learn from it. And there were so many people who wanted to see the game, the players, the youth parents wanted to see the game, and I wanted to see the game to analyze. So that's how it all started.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, and along the way, we found out that there's so many more things that we can do with it.
Yeah, okay.
In order to analyze the game and so on.
Nice. So I'm at least super excited to touch a bit more upon how Dennis actually uses it in his club day to day and week in, week out. But before we get to that, the juicy part, you could say, we just want to start with a few tips and tricks on how you can use the platform. I'm going to dive into the Veo platform and show a few things that could be tips on how to get more value from it, and actually also get Dennis's view and comments on those. So that's the first bit. Let's dive into the platform. So what you see here in front of you is the clubhouse. It's the clubhouse of the club that Dennis represents. And what you see here in the beginning is all of the recordings that's listed from all the last games that have been recorded by Espergærde. So you see the different recordings that is assigned to different teams, if they've been assigned, what date they were recorded, and by which camera they were recorded with. When Dennis logs in, he's a club admin, so he obviously sees across all the teams. What you also have out here is the teams page, where you have all the different teams that are using Veo within the club. And you also have a list of your cameras that are in use at the club as well. What I actually want to go into from the get-go is jump into the actual recording and go into a few tips and tricks on how you can use it and get Dennis's view. So what you see here at first is obviously the video player. You can navigate, between the different highlights. You can fast forward, you can rewind, and you can also make the view different or change the playback speed. All of this is, I'm not going to touch on all of it, but I'm going to go into some of these more deep dive tips and tricks on how you can get value from it. And the first tip I want to give is around the highlight list that you have on the right side. So if I click the highlight list out and I log it to my screen, you're going to see a list of highlights in chronological order from when the game started till it finished. And in this particular game, as you can see, there's 108 highlights captured. Some of them are created by Dennis, and most of them is created by the Veo camera technology automatically through the AI, such as goals, shots on goals, corners, free kicks, and so forth. And on average, you see each game having roughly, between 60 and 100 highlights. That's obviously a lot. And how can we actually go in and find some of these moments much faster? So that's my first tip. How can we find some of these moments much faster? Because time is, you could say, scarce. And if you coach multiple teams, then you cannot rush through the entire recording. So a tip here would be to click the filtering. And let's say that you had a game this weekend where you really did well on corners, for example, when you were on the opposition half. Then you know that you want to dive into the corners among these 108 highlights. So what you could do here is click on the filtering, click on the event tag, and then see the different highlight tags that are there, and click on corners. And already then you went from 108 highlights to 10 corner kicks within the game. So that's getting to the moment much faster. If you want to go and narrow it even further down, then Dennis might say, I don't want to see it for the opposing team. I just want to see our corners because we did really well offensively on those corners in this game. And now we're already down to 7 corners instead of 108 highlights. So that's a way to find moments much faster. Dennis, that was a little of the tips and the first tip of the day. Any view on filtering and going into these highlights a lot faster from you?
Yeah, I really like that feature, the highlight feature, especially when it comes to set pieces, that you can filter quickly and you can go through the set pieces. It's very useful also for the training session. If you want to dedicate some of your training to the set pieces, that you can see how the opponents set up their defensive corners, for instance. If there's anything you should be aware of. And maybe you will even find some open spaces, etc. And this is the best way to see it when you sit down and you relax and you have a lot of focus and you can see one corner 10 times in a row. Yeah. So,
Thanks a lot. So good to get Dennis' view on it, and an actual head coach. I'm not coaching myself, so that's it's good to get the real life view on the filter. So that was the first tip. I think a little extra tip to this first tip is that you can obviously go in and save these highlights. You can edit them. You can tag players in them if you would like. If you have filtered on these corners, for example, a quick way to also share with, let's say, your assistant coach or the rest of the team is to actually go up into the URL and copy this highlight URL. And if you send that web link directly to your assistant coach, when he opens, he'll see only those 7 corners that you filtered on.
Or to the keeper or players, etc. Yeah.
That was the first tip. Mm-hmm. So going to the second tip is the drawing ability. So what you see here on the screen, it's hidden a little bit, is the drawing button down here. And right now, if I'm starting to draw at this point in the game, then I'm not within any highlight. I'm actually just watching the full recording. So if I click drawing here, it's going to pause, and I can obviously use the circles, the light cone, for example. I can change the color. I know Espergærde play in red and white, so maybe I want to change it to red. I can free draw on screen and write a message. That's all good and great. I think it's important to know as a tip that when you draw on screen, if you do it while you're watching the full game, it's only to illustrate a point. Maybe if you're sitting next to the player or if you're in a sort of a classroom style, it's not going to be saved at this point. If you want the drawing to be saved, you have to do it within a highlight. So right now, gonna cancel this again, the point that I illustrated. Gonna go into one of these corners, and then you could actually, or maybe one of the other highlights here. So, bear with me for a sec. You could go in, now I'm in one of the highlights. And what I can then do is start the drawing ability as well. And what you'll see down here is as soon as you start drawing on this particular highlight, you can actually save it. Let's do a test here with the writing. Then you can save that highlight and the drawing will be saved within it. So again, the second tip is remember when you draw on free mode, it's not going to be saved. That's more to illustrate a point. If you want to save the drawing, then do it within a highlight that you're creating or editing an existing highlight. Any view from you, Dennis, on how you would use drawing in day-to-day?
Well, actually, it's a good information because I actually tried to use it and I made a lot of errors, etc. And then it was not saved afterwards. So and I learned that. I called you up, I remember. So it's a good information. It's not a feature that I use that much myself, but in the right moment, it can be very useful. I think a very important thing here is if you want to send out a message and you want it to be lived out in the real world, you need to communicate in a very simple manner. So be careful not to draw a lot. That will be my advice, and just use it very efficient. This feature.
Yeah. That was tip number 2. So tip number 3 in this case will be a way to. It's a little bit back to you could say the topic or theme is a little bit back to the first tip we gave around filtering on highlights. It's about getting a quick idea of how a game went. So what I would typically do, or what you can do, is that you can go into the right side of the menu above the highlight, and then you have the analytics pane. That is going to put up like the analytics pane, and it's going to show you, initially at first at least, all the recent form and the high-level stats. You can obviously deep dive into a lot of the different capabilities within the analytics, such as pass location and possession location and so forth. But the tip here is about actually getting a quick view of the game and how it went in the top of that view. So what you'll see is it's going to show you, for example, possession versus the last game. So in this particular game, Dennis had 11% less possession than at least the last game they played. They scored more goals, and they had more attempts towards target, even though they had less possession. So that's a quick way to get an overview of how this game actually went. So when Dennis goes into the game, he can already get an idea of what it is he's going to watch and how the game went. It also shows your recent form here versus the last 3 games you played, just to give an idea. So that's one way to get like a quick overview of what game you're about to watch. Yeah?
Also, again, I think this is a super highlight because when you come home from a game, maybe you have a different way of seeing the game because the pulse is up here and you see different things during the game. And then you come home and say, okay, so actually we did have a lot of possessions, or we did have a lot of chances created. Just be aware that stats, I'm going to quote the old famous coach, Espergærde, and it's not a popular one, but I'm going to do it. Stats are like a miniskirt, right? It makes everything interesting, but it doesn't show the whole thing. So just be aware that it shows something, and also be aware of how you feed your players with that kind of information, because it's the real world. It's not played by stats, but it gives you a great overview once you sit home and you want to analyze the game, and if you want to make progress with possessions or chances created, etc.
I really like that view. I think all of what we try to feed into the Veo product is obviously a way to sort of help the coach or help the analyst or whoever's watching it. You always need that human perspective. You always need to take the stats with your own gut feeling as well, and a balance of what how you actually played when you were watching the game real life. That was 3 tips. I actually brought like a 4th bonus tip a little bit, and that's because it's super new. So as you might know, we keep adding into the product, obviously, and adding small bits and bytes and new features, ways to help coaches and others that are using the platform. So the last tip is something that is called Speedrun. Speedrun was released 4 or 5 days ago, and You can read more about it. I'm going to do a little hack here to show you where you can read about it. I'm going to do a text on screen. So if you enter this page after the webinar, this is where we put in all of the updates we put into our product. Here you can read more about speedrun. What I want to show is down here. So you're going to see a button down here that says speedrun. And this game is actually 110, or the recording is at least 110 minutes long. But there might be a lot of time where the ball is out of play, right? It's being picked for a throw-in, or
maybe during the half.
During the half,
running,
you also started a little bit before the game, right? So there's a lot of dead time here.
Yeah.
And in this particular game, there's actually 28 minutes of non-action, you could say, where the game, or where the ball is not in play, or in play between either the opponent team or your team. Mm-hmm. So the way to use this is to click on it, and then it's going to show you all the gray areas here underneath is actually moments where the ball is in play. All the empty moments is where the ball is not in play. And obviously, if you really want to, let's say you're coaching 3 teams, you need to actually go into the moments of action. Then you can skip to those moments, and you can use your keyboard to toggle it a bit faster, or use the plus and minus sign to make it go slower. Mm-hmm. So that's a way to use speedrun and go to the moments where the ball is actually being used and is in play.
It's a super feature. I really, really like that one because it takes time to sit and watch a whole game afterwards. Sometimes I spend 3 or 4 hours in total in one game. So it would be great to speed it up and not miss out on the important points.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Super new. So
I didn't know that feature myself. So
no, 4 days old.
Going to use it, definitely.
So a fourth bonus tip, at least, the speedrun just released. Obviously, there might be some times in a game where you as a coach actually want to see what happens when it's out of play, like how is your team positioning when it's out of play maybe, but
could be,
in most cases, not spending maybe 3 or 4 hours, but reducing that a little bit and watching the key moments.
Hopefully they are preparing.
Yeah, but you can check at least.
Yeah, I will.
Great. So that was a little bit on the tips and tricks. I cheated a little bit and brought 4 instead of 3, as I said in the beginning. We got Dennis's view on those tips and tricks, and hopefully you can apply them at your club as well. So that was finding moments faster with the filtering on highlights. It was about drawing on screen and when it will be saved and not saved. So drawing in a highlight versus drawing to make a point in let's say, the classroom style. And then the third was getting a quick view of the game via analytics and your recent form. And then the bonus tip here was the speedrun feature just released a few days ago. Cool. So now we'll transition into sort of towards the end of the webinar. But one of the key topics actually is also to hear a bit more from Dennis and how he uses it on a weekly basis, and how they play and what they're looking for in the video. Maybe you can share a bit more about what we're going to watch. We're going to see 2 different sequences from 2 different games, and maybe you can put a few words into what we're gonna see.
Yeah. Well, as I said before, so my playing style is more or less based in the 3 P's: possession, positioning, and pressing. And especially possession and positioning goes hand in hand. And what we're going to see now is actually, I think we're playing against the same opponent in 2 different games. Okay. But it's the same phase of the game, phase 1, building up against high pressure. So I really like the fast forward possession, first touch, especially when we have a plan and we want to take advantage of a high pressure. And turn it around and use it as an attacking opportunity. And this is so when we're doing our training, I might tell you about this after the first clip, but always we have passing exercises first time. We have rondos with the first touch, and this is one of the reasons why we're doing it. So
let's try and roll the clip. So just before I roll the clip, what I'm hearing is that we're going to watch 2 different clips, but actually against the same opponent that you played last season and recently this season.
Yeah, I think there's 3 or 4 months between those 2 games.
Okay. Yeah. Now we're watching the clip again, last season.
The first one, yeah.
Just going to roll the clip, and then we can talk a bit about what is we're seeing and what you were looking for in that clip.
Yes. So in this clip, we are in control of the ball, and then we give away the control. And we end up by giving away the ball. and losing control. And I really like my teams to be in control. And you see the opponent trying to take advantage of this and sit in a high pressure. So if we're good enough of utilizing this and take make it turn it around and use it as an opportunity, we can go into the attacking phase really fast.
Okay.
But then it's all about how we position ourselves and how we the way we progress with the possession.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what? Just for the audience sake. So this is a highlight that Dennis has found and created himself as part of in the editor. It's spelled out in Danish. It's a Danish club, so they communicate in Danish, obviously. But what it says, what I'm hearing, is that it talks with a code about the phase 1.
Yes.
The build-up and working in high pressure.
Build up against high pressure. Yeah. From stage 1. Yeah.
All right. So now we've seen it from the first game 3-4 months ago against this opponent on an example you found on what you don't want to do. Correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So analyzing the game, looking at the game through the 3 phases, the 3 stages, and when we have the ball. You can also look at it when we don't have the ball and how we want to progress without the ball.
Yeah.
So here, but this clip shows me that there's some improvement that we can work on. Some development potential in the team, and this is where also Veo really is a fantastic idea, because you can show all the players this clip. Once the pulse is down, everybody's sitting ready to focus on this, saying how are we positioned here? What else can we do in this situation? How does the opponent look like in this situation? And that's how you want to communicate with the players. But you can also set up templates and training exercises specific pointed out from this situation, and then train on the improvement you want to make.
I know it's a few months ago, but maybe while we transition over to the next clip that's going to show what you then did instead a few games later against the same opponent. Can you remember what you sort of went in and did the next couple of months that you went in and trained specifically for this?
Well, I did, and I pointed it out also for the players, but it's not a new thing for them. It's just a thing that you always need to work on, how to be in control in possession, but also how you position and what kind of spaces on the fields you want to utilize and how you want to make progress. And here you see a number 10 dropping, so everybody know what's going to happen.
Okay.
And then we are really depending on some first touch action here and some good positioning, and then you can turn the whole thing around and make it more efficient.
Yeah. So now I've switched screen to the newer game, a game that was played pretty recently against.
So, can I add?
Yeah,
some passing exercises, some first touch rondos, and some 11 against 0 exercises is what we did here to improve our game.
That's very concrete, and I think it's super helpful for the audience to know, like, especially now that they're going to see the second sequence of how you then improved in a similar situation. So the clip we just saw was from a game, again, 3-4 months ago, where there was a high pressure from the opponent, and it ended up going out of bounds, failing to sort of get past that high pressure, right? So now we're going to go in. I flipped to another game here from Espergærde. The sharp eye will see they're playing on home turf now against the same team. So what we're going to see here, I'm going to navigate out to the highlight list, and I'm going to click on this first highlight that Dennis has created to show how they actually then improved. You can also see, if you know Danish at least, that it's the same title to the highlight. And let me roll it first maybe, and then we can roll it again and talk over it.
It's a quite fast clip, I think.
So high pressure again, playing fast out of it, right?
So here you know, with the right passes, the right positioning, playing on third man, you can get the ball behind all lines in a few seconds. Yeah. So that's a way to improve very fast and to play fast against the high pressure. That's one model. If you want to utilize the situation.
I think it's really interesting to see that now I've rolled it 2 times, and I'm just going to roll it again. But it's really interesting to see how you manage to go ahead.
From the keeper to the center back to number 10.
Directly up to number 10, yeah.
To the wing back and to the attacker behind the lines.
So despite the high pressure, with 3 or 4 passes, in a few seconds you're on the other side of the pitch, right?
You're in a one-on-one situation, and if you don't get the ball, you can sit in a high pressure, and you turn the whole table, right? Exactly. So that's one way to do it, and also I showed my players this clip to say this is how easy football can be played.
Yeah. I really like that it's the example. I really like that it's against the same team, and that you can actually see that you're doing. You've improved over the last couple of months playing them now in this season. Thanks for sharing, Dennis.
Welcome.
Getting towards the end of this webinar, I just want to round off with a few classical webinar questions and pick Dennis's brain a little bit more. A lot of good tips already on what you can do practically in between games and so on and so forth. What I want to ask here towards the outro is if you should pick out, maybe based on your general experience and obviously all the talks we just had, what are sort of the 3 most useful things you see in Veo? Not feature specific, but how you use it maybe.
Yeah, because I'm not really a feature kind of guy or a tech savvy, so but I use the recordings a lot. Really, I do, and both for my own sake and also in order to communicate in an efficient way with the players. Yeah. But we are also trying to create a playing style throughout all teams in the club. And here you can see, you can use some of the recordings, and this is what we mean by the 3Ps. And I think that's a lot more efficient than moving around with some dots on a tactical board. So you can see it in real action. Yeah. So that's how we use the recordings to call in the young teams and also their coaches and show them the recordings. We use that a lot.
Can I maybe dive a little bit into that, because Absolutely. I really like that topic. It's something we try and speak to a lot about, even on any kind of level, and you playing in, you could say, the mid-tier of Danish football, still trying to think about a playing philosophy and something you try and sort of ingrain throughout the age groups. Yeah. So if you manage to show that clip to the younger teams, what do you expect to get out of having that unified playing style?
I expect the team to find it easier to go and live it out on the pitch. Very often we tend to make football like rocket science. Yeah. And there's a lot of very, very clever tactical people in the game, and many ways to play it. So when you say 3Ps, and what's behind the 3Ps, and how does it look like in the real world? And I think that especially football players, they want to visualize it. They want to see it, both in the right manner, but also when it doesn't work. Yeah. And I think that will be a lot easier to implement in the whole club, especially when it comes to the youth teams. Yeah.
I really like how you're the head coach of the senior teams, obviously playing an important role in the club. But I like how you also take accountability of trying to, you could say, ingrain that playing style into the other parts of the club and the youth teams. Because that's the long game, right? To get the youth teams to at least find it easier to go to the senior team later on.
Absolutely.
Even though it's way out of your remit, you could say, to some extent, or your responsibility.
So you can say I'm helping myself in that way, right? So we get out some good players, but I'm also doing this because this is how I see football is playing in the best way, in the most entertaining way as well. So it doesn't get too rocket science.
No.
And it's football in the best way with a lot of power.
Yeah. So
that's also a way to secure that style.
We took a bit of a detour. That was one of 3 things. What about the second?
So when you see clips like this, for instance, what we just saw here, very often we as coaches, we have a full book of training exercises. And you put up some cones, and then you make the players run in those cones, and it looks good on the training pitch. But if you can put up the cones like exactly where the opponents are moving and really take out a real life example, and put it in, and they can see it on Veo afterwards. It makes it even more efficient and even more real. And so that's how I use it a lot. Very often you have passing templates, passing exercises, but they're taken out from book. So if you put it on the right spot on the field and you put it, where you see the opponents in the last game, it works better. For me, it works better.
That's a new one for me, and it's really interesting to hear that. I think it's a good point, right? Either it's in a book or actually you can go on Veo and show that this is why I set up the cones this way. We actually have seen it in real life. That's super cool. Number 3?
Number 3 also. So last only yesterday I sent out a clip on my mobile phone to a player, and now we're talking about a personal coaching, and here we were talking about his body position. How he positions himself when he gets the ball. And so you can also go down and coach personal on this and use the recordings like that. You can talk about his body shape, and you can talk about his preparing. You can talk about his decision making in the game, because when you're in the game, you might not see that you have 3 opponents around you.
No.
And this is not the right decision in this moment, or at this part of the field. So, and I think it's a lot easier to tap into and to adapt once you're sitting and you're having a look at it. And it's easier to go out and make a positive change and make a better decision next time. So it's a very, very constructive and efficient way to communicate with your players directly afterwards. After the games.
Yeah. Super nice. I'm playing at a much lower level myself, but I'm really excited to try and see if I can just mimic 10% of what Dennis has shared today.
We can take a session afterwards.
Yeah.
If you like.
Yeah. That was 3 things that Dennis values a lot in using the video technology. As an outro, the last question I want to share, also thinking about the audience out there, is if you were to start now, if you didn't have a Veo now, and if you were to start with Veo now, what would you do, or what would you recommend to the audience? Something you didn't think of back then, maybe?
On a low practical note, what we learned from the first 3 games also was to maybe take back the camera like 3 meters or so, because then you had the whole view of the pitch, and you can see kind of the patterns in the game. And sometimes, in the beginning we were too near to the field, and so we didn't see the whole thing. So that's just on a low practical note.
Yeah.
Also, as a new coach with Veo, I can only recommend that you sit down and you just watch the whole game through and enjoy it, and just like you would see a normal game, before you start to analyze, before you start to throw it back at the players. So just to sit back and enjoy it, that you have this view as a coach, and you can also see it and enjoy the game. It's not always that you can enjoy the game in the same way while it's...
when you're on Saturday, Sunday on the pitch, then you can't really enjoy the game the same.
And there's a lot of things going on, right?
Yeah.
So that's and then start up easy to go in and find out what is it that I want to analyze here, and maybe take out the set pieces and fill with the game.
Yeah, that's some really good advice. Also to get a proper start and a good head start.
Yeah.
Get the full view and seeing the patterns that way, and take your time in the beginning. Yeah. That was actually it for the day 2 of the webinar series today. And I really want to thank Dennis for coming in and sharing his knowledge and his expertise. And thanks to all of you out there for tuning in. So that was it for us. Thanks, Dennis.
You're welcome.